Hello and greetings to you all from our studio in Europe. This is Michael Jackson. I'm your host for the morning or afternoon, depending on the time zone that you're in, talking to you about our first ever Tissue World Digital Days. Many of you will have seen me as the Tissue World host of Tissue World Television, and it's my great pleasure to be with you to share a part of these digital days with you. Tissue World, as I'm sure you're aware, has been with you since 1993, and literally it's a unique platform across the industry where people meet, learn, and do business. And this digital version, the very first ever, is certainly going to do just that for you as well. It's really all about embracing transformation and discussion around how tissue can thrive in turbulent times. And goodness knows, these are indeed turbulent times. We've got 3 days of matchmaking here on this platform for you as well, along with these plenary webinar sessions, which I'll be introducing you to. And we've also on this platform got both chat and Q&A enabled. So when I introduce you in a few moments to our moderator from Singapore, Andy Schur, he'll be making sure that you're using those chat and Q&A functions to engage and question both our keynote speakers and our panelists as well. So we've designed this program to bring you as close as we possibly can to a live tissue world as we know it. And in these new and unusual times, obviously the pandemic has caused many people, including ourselves, to postpone all live events for 2020. But there's lots of opportunity, as I say, for you to engage on this platform with both our speakers and our delegates, as well as you engaging yourself with fellow delegates who are joining us from around the world. Speaking of that, ladies and gentlemen, we're approaching 1,000 people today watching our conference, getting involved in the Tissue World Digital Days, and they literally are attending from all across the world. At my last count, I was looking earlier today, we've got well over 40 countries represented, right across America, the UK, Europe, Africa, hello to our colleagues in India and the Middle East, and even Australia, of course. And yet they represent the creme de la creme of your industry in tissue, from the C-suite all the way through to executives and directors, engineers, researchers, and even technicians, literally representing the entire industry. There are suppliers to the industry. There are integrated tissue product makers. There are converters, jumbo roll makers, machine makers, retail and distribution people, to mention just a few. And of course, several key sponsors to whom we're extremely grateful because they've helped bring this platform to you. And obviously, it wouldn't be right unless we heard a brief message from each of them across the sessions. So you're joining us now for the very first of our sessions, focusing on Asia in the spotlight, managing from a crisis point of view and yet planning for the future. Literally what we hope to do with that agenda is take you through not only keynote presentations. Ray Somnath of AFRI is here. He'll be putting Asia in the spotlight, and then Andy Schur will be leading a panel to follow as well. So we hope to engage you here on this platform fully for the next 2¼ hours. I'd like then, if I may, to get right into it and welcome the very first of our sponsors from Tissue World Digital Days. Our platinum sponsor is no less than Solar Turbines. Now, this company shouldn't be new to you, but let me give you a little bit of background as to where they are and who they are. They're part of the Caterpillar Group, and Solar Turbines has a 65-year-old proud history as a gas turbine manufacturer with multiple references in combining heat and power industrial applications, including both tissue and paper applications as well. Solar Turbines manufactures the world's most widely used family of mid-sized industrial gas turbines, ranging from 1 to 23 megawatts, and they have over 16,000 solar units currently operating as well in cogeneration, in power generation, and oil and gas applications, crossing more than 100 countries. And would you believe it, they've accumulated in excess of 3 billion operating hours, all with continuity, efficiency, and sustainability. So I'm delighted to introduce you today to our Asia Pacific Development Manager for Solar Turbines. Mr. Emilio Rigamonte is here to join us, and he's live from his place of work in Singapore. I think it's 5 p.m. in Singapore now. Some of us are watching this very early, by the way. I know it's 4 a.m. in New York, 4 p.m. in Singapore. Wow, but we're watching it from all around the globe. Emilio's ready for us. He's been a keynote speaker, so he's no stranger to this kind of platform in energy-related conferences all around the world, and he's taken part as a guest in many, many different forum discussions. So with more than 20 years personally of experience in the energy business, he believes that his focus is to connect technology providers, business partners, investors, and developers to create innovative solutions that support the future energy transformation. So let's bring him in without further ado. I know it's good afternoon to you. So good afternoon, Emilio. Nice to have you with us on the platform, sir.
Good afternoon and good morning to you. Good morning to everybody.
Thanks, Emilio. Let's go right into this, if we may. And I'd like to ask you first and foremost, obviously the industry is talking about the transition from coal to gas in the tissue market as well. How does Solar Turbine support that transition, sir?
Absolutely, Michael. Yeah, especially here in Asia, the transition from coal to gas is something very, very important. And I'm thinking about countries like China, India, Indonesia, which have been based on coal for many, many years, but they are transitioning now to gas. So during this transition phase, the way you can try to minimize the impact of going from coal to gas in terms of economics is to think about cogeneration. So cogeneration means producing electricity and the heat that is needed in the tissue factory, mostly steam, through one single plant. So the gas turbine can produce electricity, and then through a heat recovery steam generator can produce also steam for the factory. And this is the most traditional way to apply cogeneration in the tissue industry.
And there are a lot of benefits from standard cogeneration, aren't there?
Absolutely right. Yeah, the main benefit, as I said, is reducing the operating cost. And this is, of course, a big effect and is paying back the plant in a pretty nice way. But there are other effects that are very positive for the factory, which are, for example, the improvement of efficiency and the reduction of the carbon footprint, which is very, very important again in this stage.
And lower emissions result from that as well. I'd like to move on, though, if I may, and just ask you, Emilio, about an example of the integration between gas turbine technology and tissue manufacturing. What's happening there, sir?
Yeah, right. Well, we have different ways to integrate a gas turbine in the tissue machine. The most traditional one is, as I said, just produce steam, and this is very, very applicable to the low-speed tissue machines, so all the machines that are still around. In this way, the interface with the plant is very minimal. There are very, very low modification needed, and this is applicable for all the plants that are converting from coal to gas. Is very, very, very applicable because there are very, very limited interfaces and modifications.
I understand that a lot of that is coming through on high-speed machines, though. Is that primarily where gas turbine technology works better?
That is, let's say, a more advanced technology for tissue, but also the integration is more advanced. It gives more benefits. So on top of the benefits that you can already have with a traditional cogeneration integration, the direct drying technology is basically conveying the exhaust of a gas turbine directly in the tissue hood to dry the tissue paper. And in this case, the additional advantages that you have are in terms of product quality. The fluffiness of a product is getting better. The speed of a machine can be increased, and both these two effects are due to the very dry condition of the exhaust heat that is used for drying the tissue paper.
And of course, this is very much a proven technology.
Oh yeah, we have more than 20 plants running with direct drying technology, so the most advanced one. And I would say that all the new plants that are designed all around the world, they at least have the option to go to good cogeneration already in the design phase, and this is just the best way to go to improve the efficiency and reduce the carbon footprint.
Brilliant. Emilia, let me ask you then, you've mentioned a little bit of installation already, but what is the installation base like in Asia, as we're focusing on Asia for this section of our webinar, but also perhaps going on to a global view as well, sir?
Yeah, let's say in general, in the pulp and paper business, we have more than 300 units installed. Out of this, more than 70 are in the tissue manufacturing, and more than 20 of these 70s are with direct drying technology, as I said before, so the most advanced technology. And this is a very, very established technology. It's nothing new, nothing that is experimented, let's say. It's very, very traditional and proven technology.
Wow. So if I got that correctly, pulp and paper and tissue, more than 250 units globally. That's
300.
A healthy number. 300.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What are the returns like?
Yeah, that is an important question, an important point for every investment. And as I said, the advantages are not just in terms of emissions or efficiency, but are really economic benefits. So I give you an example for Asia, which is where we are focusing on. And for example, Thailand has very good conditions for cogeneration due to the price of electricity and gas that are favorable to this type of application. And so for a medium-sized plant, 100,000 tons paper products produced per year, we have a savings of $3.5 million per year in operating costs, with an IRR of above 20%. The payback time is about three years. And this is definitely the biggest, let's say, advantage that you can see when you propose this kind of investment. On top of this, we have more than 18,000 tons of CO2 reduction in terms of improvements on the environmental side.
Wow, that sounds incredibly impressive. I mean, I understand that Solar Turbines as a leader around the world are looking well into the future of energy as a big part of your business planning. What do you think about the future of energy? Do you think gas turbines are ready for the future?
Yeah, this is a very interesting time. We are transitioning to a new era for energy. We all know the important goals that we have in every country to reach basically zero carbon emission in 2050, and definitely gas turbines are ready for that. So one of the ways we can reach these goals is, for example, using biofuels, biogases, or hydrogen in different percentages. Already today, our turbines are capable to burn this type of gases, and we can transition in the future to 100% carbon neutral gases as soon as the grid, the infrastructure will be available. So we can say that even in investment today in a gas turbine is the future-proof investment, since the gas turbine can be ready to use carbon neutral gases in the future.
That is magnificent, sir. Thank you for giving us an update on that. And it's a real pleasure to have an industry leader like yourselves involved in this session. We're delighted on behalf of Tissue World that you became a platinum sponsor. I know that you're available to all the delegates and they can have Q&A with you if they'd like on this platform right now, or even questions as well. But I just wanted to thank you, sir, for joining us and taking time out of your schedule. It's a pleasure to be with you. And thank you once again for your participation this afternoon.
Pleasure for me. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Emilio. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, you've got a taste of the kind of quality of people that are talking on this digital day platform for you. It's my great honor and pleasure now to introduce you to your moderator for the rest of this session over the next couple of hours. He's the event sales manager of Tissue World for Informa Markets, based in Singapore, the legend that is Andy Chua. Now, Andy is experienced in sales in the industrial space, ranging from hardware and software, offering all the way through to solution sales. He's currently on a mission, he describes it, with Tissue World to help businesses in the tissue industry connect and grow. And he's certainly going to be busy doing that for you in the next couple of hours. Would you please welcome to the platform, Mr. Andy Chua. Andy, over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. So right now, let me introduce our keynote speaker today. He is Mr. Somath Ray. He is based in Jakarta, a principal at A3 Management Consulting, very passionate about bringing strategic insight and solution to forestry, fiber, paper and paperboard, and tissue segment. Somav has over 12 years of experience on different strategic development projects, focusing on strategy formulation, industry and market analysis, due diligence, development and transformation, and brand management. So can I welcome Mr. Somav to be online right now?
Oh, good afternoon, Andy.
Yes, so I'll hand over to you right now for the keynote presentation.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Andy. Good day to everyone. I'm quite happy to be here. And we have put together a couple of slides that we go through. Then we can have more discussions on that as we proceed. Let me share my screen just quick. Okay, Andy, I hope it's quite visible. It's clear?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Right, so welcome again, and thank you for joining this interesting event. We definitely waited for it through March, and it's quite a happy time that we can meet together during this quite a challenging time as well. What we are looking at is what you call as Asian Spotlight. Of course, there are 2 points that comes out quite distinctly. It's managing this crisis, and how do we plan for the future? Of course, it's quite promising, and it's quite an interesting situation as well. But before we jump into some of those future topics, let's build up what we are dealing with and what was the situation that we have been kind of involved in. It was definitely a very challenging time. Many things happened. The COVID or the coronavirus rattled our world. It definitely tested the supply chains. It tested our consuming habits, how we interact with different things. And it also brought very interesting situations, which a lot of people might not have seen in their lifetime, or I don't know, I have not seen in my lifetime. An interesting one I just wanted to share is this one news that came across, I think in the month of March. One lady in Australia, she by mistake bought 48 boxes instead of 48 rolls. But later, when there was a crisis, there was a shortage of tissue, she was able to sell this and earn enough to actually save for her kids' future education, which is quite amazing. So it was actually gold rather than tissue in her case. And we also noticed quite a lot of empty shelves, and also these kind of notices that you see here where they talk about you can only buy 1 pack, which is quite interesting, which have not happened. And it has kind of brought unique scenarios to us as well. There were 2 sides of it, if you really think about it. The immediate consequences were quite different from different countries. The immediate impact was actually on the supply chain, how resilient the supply chain is. And also the immediate impact was on the consumer behavior, how they buy it, how they use it, how they actually think about substitutes as well. So it was quite an interesting situation. And if you look at what happened is that the consumer segment became better sales. As you can see, this example, it spiked, partly driven by hoarding. And then there was a kind of a slow down, which was when people started actually using those ones that they have hoarded, or they stopped buying as well. So there was a peak. Away from home was the worst hit, I would say, or not worst hit, but comparatively bad hit, and it was not able to be selling so much. But different countries responded in different ways. Some were better in managing it. Some were better in actually managing these temporary shortages. And the ones who came out best were the ones who had local supplies. So as you can see, like Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia, they did much better than other countries. And we see that it has kind of pushed towards a normal situation. And this would continue, and we will get back to, let's say, a more normal times if all the other different industry segments starts open up. So that's what we project in a way. Yeah. And sorry. Yeah. So we talked about two things: how consumer behavior changed, and how also the industry segment changed. So let's start with what happened in the consumer segment. If you really look at the consumer behavior, what we look at is they were homebound, they were more hygienic, and that's kind of like create a situation where the home segment, I would say, at the consumer segment, where have higher sales. So that's one thing happened. And then there were a lot of things that were already there, like online purchasing, move towards e-commerce. Those things were accelerated. So we saw more people buying some of these tissues commodities, and they were able to uh, buy them more online. So that kind of things happened. So there was a surge in e-commerce. If you look at in Southeast Asia, there are almost in some countries we saw a surge of almost like 23%, 32% in case of, let's say, Indonesia. So there's a huge amount of surge in e-commerce, and it was a very interesting time. It was where consumer moved towards a different approach. Uh, they moved towards how they consume as well. So there was a higher consumption in some categories. Some categories like away from home had a kind of negative impact. But overall, it was a kind of interesting time for tissue. So that was on the consumer side. And if we kind of think about how it will going to happen, let's say it happened in the case of, let's say, the industries, different ones have different impacts. Overall, they were much profitable. They were in terms of they were selling more, but mostly on the consumer segment. And but what was actually tested was their supply chain. So if you can see some of these examples, like in case of, let's say, APP, they were able to change their approach very quickly. They were able to temporarily retask themselves to focus on some of the product segments that's more needed. They were also able to supply to the markets which were having a shortage or they were having some kind of problems. So supply chain was tested. And in some cases, like in case of NTPM, they were able to have more profitability, let's say, because of the lower pulp prices. So this kind of different mix of situation happened, and it kind of contributed towards overall profitability of this whole industry. And we also noticed quite a lot of interesting situation, like in case of Burley Jewelry from Thailand, that they thought about coming up with some innovative products. They also were more inclined towards more investing more in doing more production. So they have declared they're going to invest more to increase their production by 50%. And they also have launched a new category, which they call as the multi-purpose category, which can be used for different purposes, and which is quite interesting. So there was innovation, there was testing of their supply chain, and also how some of these producers respond much more faster towards the change in their market dynamics. Yeah. And let's see what's going to happen in the future. That's the second part of the discussion that we are looking at. Different markets will recover in different ways. Also, they will recover based on how they were able to control coronavirus, and what kind of industry structure that we are looking at. So here you can have like quite a spread of different countries, and you can see really good ones as China as a benchmark, quite resilient. They were able to control the spread quite fast. Now they're back to manufacturing, back to their economic path, whereas you have on the other side, let's say Philippines and Thailand, who are quite terribly impacted, partly because of the less tourism, partly because of certain manufacturing being shuttered for the time being. So that thing happened. But overall, there would be a quite fast recovery. And by end of, let's say, 2021, most of these countries will go back to their previous economic growth plans or how they were thinking about doing it before the corona happened. But which is a promising situation for tissue, and it would definitely bring a lot of opportunities, which we will look into a bit details in the next slide. So what we look at is that in case of Southeast Asia, we are definitely looking at a growth rate of 5.2%. This is updated based on this year's situation. What it means is that there is a growth from 1.1 million tons to, let's say, 1.5, which is substantial. And this would not be same across all the countries. Some countries will lead much more. Some countries, for example, like Indonesia, which have a much higher growth rate, around 6.7%, followed by, let's say, Vietnam, which is 6.4%. So this different countries have different growth rates. And this is partly because of their consumer behavior as such, and how they transition towards, let's say, more tissue consumption. So that's definitely going to happen. There was one question was asked, like, how does the future hold in terms of, let's say, what would be the key drivers? What would be the key things that will drive this industry or that will drive, let's say, the consumption pattern? I would say what happened would definitely be a kind of interesting situations. But once this situation is mitigated or where the COVID impact is reduced, we would see much more drive just because of the economic and the population growth rather than some other situation. So that's going to happen, and that would take precedence as compared to some other immediate situations that we have seen. If we look at countries, of course, as I said, Indonesia would be the important one, followed by, let's say, Vietnam, and then there are countries which are more saturated, let's say Thailand and Singapore, but they would still be driving growth. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of growth that we are looking at, and it seems quite healthy as we move forward. Yeah. And this is the important part about is the cost factor, or let's say the raw material aspect. And I wanted to highlight about especially the pulp. It was quite an interesting situation that we have seen in the end of 2019. There was kind of a sentiment that pulp prices will get better or it will go down. So a lot of different speculations were happening, but it was kind of impacted because of the COVID-19 situation. Because of the graphic paper demand was lower, so it was kind of pulling down on the pulp prices. There were high inventory and there was a stronger USD. So these all contributed towards a pulling down factor. But tissue kind of helped as along with some other grades as well. And the demand from the tissue segment kind of helped in keeping the price at a steady pace. Also, the rebound of China quite fast compared to other countries kind of helped. So they have more buying power. So these things are happening, and what we see in the near future, that pulp will try to be stabilized. It will try to come back to a certain kind of stable situation. May not be so much strong, but it would definitely be an interesting time for tissue producers. Yeah. And just moving on to, let's say, the investment pipelines that we have, we do see the market is quite, let's say, overcapacity at the moment. And also some of these projects which are already ongoing, as you can see in the list, some of them are completed, some are planned, but we have not seen any kind of stopping of any of those projects. They might be slow and they might be not really going at the pace that we were seeing before, but most of them are still ongoing. So there has been no stop in any of these projects. It's still on plan or still on being intended. Uh, However, there have been some limited access to the sites from foreign machine suppliers that might have impacted some of these projects, but they're still going forward. We do see quite a huge amount of investment ongoing in this region. The biggest player, as you know, is definitely APP, which controls almost 55% in terms of capacity in this region. And they are keep on investing to kind of proceed with their plans. And we see that it will go if there would not be a stop on that. Addition to this, we also feel like there would be certain additional investments. There would be certain other, let's say, companies trying to invest in other product segments to consolidate their market positioning. The recent interesting one we have noticed is Kimberly-Clark trying to acquire Softex. So it's a kind of a movement towards having a better portfolio, having a wider portfolio. So those kind of things will be more happening in the future. And that's what we anticipate. But key things to take out from this is that despite all this impact from COVID, we don't see any of this investment stopping or any of those plans being kind of closed, but it might be slightly delayed or it might be pushed a little bit further in the future. So still quite a healthy pipeline of projects we look at right now. Yeah. And that's all we had for today. We're always very happy to have discussions. And these are my contact details and my colleagues. And do feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and we can have more discussions on different topics. Right. That's all for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Someh, for the insight into the industry. Now let's have a short video from our gold sponsor, Vico, before I introduce our panelists for today's discussion. Okay, thank you, everyone. So today for our panel discussion, we have with us Mr. Tim Woods, Managing Director of Industry Edge. This is an Australian's leading data analysis and intelligence firm in the fiber, wood products, paper and fiber packaging sectors, including recovered fiber. Tim has been a professional researcher, market and business analyst and consultant for more than 25 years. And we also have Mr. Danny Cristono, Senior Commercial Director of PT Sun Paper Source, a tissue paper manufacturing company in Indonesia. And lastly, we have Mr. Ronaldo Paruka, SVP, Strategic Technology Manager, experience in Southeast Asia region, identifying and prospecting opportunities, as well as bringing to customers possibilities to increase their profitability through void paper portfolio of technologies and development. Hi, everyone. Can we get you online right now? Hi, Tim.
Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
Ronaldo. Hi, Danny.
Hello, guys.
Hi. Okay, so the first question for today is, I mean, we have been talking about COVID and the disruption to businesses and how businesses need to evolve to survive. So what are the positive lessons learned from the COVID-19 crisis? Maybe we can start with Danny. How has the pandemic affected your production and planning for the future?
Yeah, this year is quite challenging for us as everybody in the world. This year is we start with COVID in the beginning of February, and until now we already have 8 months of this pandemic crisis. But looks like we are in a tissue in a good position right now because people are more aware of this hygiene lifestyle. People are more care about what they do in their daily life. We see a good prospect for this tissue product in this pandemic time. I see a good progress in our, because this year we have more capacity is coming online, 36,000 as you mentioned before. Mr. Thomas mentioned before, 30,000 tons of new capacity coming, and all 100% absorbed by the market. Because in the beginning of the pandemic times, everybody are rushing for this tissue product in the supermarket, in the rack are empty, but this is only a surge in one period of time. But in overall, I agree with Thomas' previous explanation that away from home are very, very in a difficult situation. Consumer tissue is now is the one who can replacing the quantity that is gone from the away from home market. But good things is we see tissue are becoming one of the what you call it a good industry that sustain in this difficult situation. Where a lot of our businesses are going south, but this issue is we see this is one of the best year for us in the sun paper stock.
Okay, so maybe I can route to Tim. How has it impacted the supply and demand for raw materials?
Oh, yes. Thanks, Andy. There's a couple of really good examples, I think. The first thing is if we can't predict a pandemic, as we just saw before in the AFRI presentation, we also can't predict human behaviour. And so you get these immediate disruptions in what typically for tissue, right, has been pretty metronomic demand and supply, continuous growth. You buy it because you need to consume it. You know, once you try, you always buy with tissue products. And so there's been this expectation in the supply chain that you could predict very precisely what your pulp needs might be, and that your pulp producer could therefore predict what their wood fibre needs might be. And what we saw this time around was two things happening. First of all, consumer behaviour changed so much that it sucked forward a whole lot of inventory, and that caused the industrial system. Australia is a good example because we're further away from a lot of places, caused the industrial system to really speed up. And as a result, a whole lot of resources the market became short of those resources. So the Australian tissue manufacturers, they rely on imported pulp. And it has come a relatively long distance, some of it from Canada, some of it from Southeast Asia, sure, but also some of it from South America. And so there were supply fractures that began to open up, and had the consumer behaviour continued, then we would have seen demand strong and supply backing off. Now, those empty shelves, they don't really tell the proper story, right? Because not here nor anywhere else. The system had enough supply, but in some ways only just. So once that some of that behaviour got back to normal, you had supply chains that were no longer stable and consistent. They had lumps in them, and we're still seeing that. So on the one hand, let me give an example of the Port of Sydney, which is only a middle-sized port by any global standard. The Port of Sydney is completely congested right at the moment, not because it's overweight demand over time, but because it's overweight for demand in and out right now. And at the same time, can't find containers in a range of places. So we're going to see, and we're going to see the ripple of that very big rock in the market pond for resource availability. We're going to see those ripples bouncing around for some time to come yet. And every time there's a new lockdown in one region, that means that they can't ship a resource. It means that in another region, they'll be short on supply, and their disruption is, in our case, sometimes 3 or 4 weeks away from someone else's disruption when they can't supply a market like this. And vice versa, of course, when, say, an Australian or a further afield producer is supplying wood chips into a pulp mill. If they're disrupted, 3 or 4 weeks' time, the pulp mill will be disrupted. That'll have flow-on effects. It looks to me like there's 6 to 12 months of that coming still, even after the big shocks, and maybe more than that too. Andy, we can't hear you.
There's something wrong. Okay, so sorry, there's something wrong with my system again. So Ronaldo, how can technology addresses new ways of working? Are tissue makers changing their view of investing in capital equipment in these times of uncertainty?
Okay, so very good point, and I will try to divide this in two answers, 2 parts of this question. The first, as everybody knows, Toscotec and Voith get together, and Toscotec is part of Voith family since April this year. And together we have more than 200 years in this experience in paper making. So, and we are a full line supplier. When we have different, let's say, different behaviors in the business lines, how we change our working ways. And for example, in the business line projects where we have lots of meetings with customers, where we decide new projects, where we define and explain technologies, was really rare before the COVID that any of those meetings was done online. So customer really value that the people be together, that you put your face on this stuff and you discuss. But today, none of these meetings are done by presence. Everything basically done online. In terms of services, in the beginning of the pandemic, we suffer more because nobody could travel and the people could not serve the customers accordingly. And but in the other hand, before COVID, Voith Paper developed a digital product that is called on-call video, that is based on virtual presence, that the customers could be help to contact us in terms of our technicals, our specialists. They could contact us 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, and wherever these guys are sitting. So then we could really helpful in terms of maintenance, was very used in terms of helping in maintenance, helping in audits, helping in inspection, and even supporting some startups and commissioning of new machines. In terms of consumables, we also developed a platform called Web Shop that was very welcome by the customer because they could buy the things online as we do in our private life. We can buy, we can be connected. So this was very welcome. And as you guys said, that the stability of the supply chain. So we have a big supply chain that is fabrics, and without the fabrics, you cannot continue your operation. And we did everything that we could to really keep stable the supply of the fabrics. Now, this is the first part of my answer. So how we are changing the capital investment view, and what I can say, as we see in the previous presentation, we have projects in the pipelines, so projects are moving. But what we see really, the digital agenda is in the mind of everybody. Everybody talks about this. Everybody talks how to bring effectiveness in the production. But what we really don't see, that a lot of investments in terms of replacing automation platforms in order to be ready for the digital transformation. Yeah, globally, we see that the companies really understood that these kind of products can bring a lot of return on investments, but in the other hand, they don't invest too much because the success ratio of those projects, of implementation of those projects, is very low. So this gap is very critical. And what we are doing to close this gap is supporting customers. We are doing, even during the COVID times, we are doing this remote feasibility studies that the customers can really understand their assets in terms of digitals, create a roadmap, how to reach the digital targets, and really what's really makes sense to the customers to invest and have a good return on investments. Okay.
Thank you, Ronaldo. So we have heard, three different lessons from our panelists. So next will be, what is the industry's approach to risk management in light of recent history? Are we better prepared now for the unexpected? So Ronaldo, from your perspective, is Asia prepared in terms of risk management, or how prepared are the industry in terms of
what I can say, we are better prepared. Yes, we are. We learn a lot with this let's say challenging times, but the companies has learned it a lot, and how to protect their workforce, how to secure their production, and how really to deliver their products, even that away from home, at home, or whatever. And with the travel and new interest restrictions, so it's very difficult to have the access. Is also in our private life, so you have to have contact with the others, you have to order your products. Is the same as I just explained before. We have these products that we launched, that is simple products to bring more easier the day by day operation, that is like tools with virtual presence, web shops, and so on. I think this is very, very important. The people learn with that, and also learn that we are not in the stage of technology that everything can be done without the people. So without the people, we don't have the business. So we have to have this very clear. But one point that is that already emphasized it, we don't see a lot of investments in the digital transformation. The people is ready to be in the digital section. Okay.
Okay. So Danny, can I also find out, is some people gonna implement any new risk management processes after these recent COVID incidents?
Yeah,
to future-proof yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Since we had this pandemic, we already start implement to first what we protect is our production side. Production side, that everybody have to be free of this COVID-19 virus. We check every workers of ours. We do the test to all of them. Once a month, the social distancing are put in place in the factory, and in the office we already run 50% working from home already since the beginning of the pandemic. And but in overall, from the supply chain, I don't see any problem in at least in our company for supplyability or of our production. We can see, but we still rely on the people in the factory. Yes, like Ronaldo said, in terms of production, we are still more depending on people. Yes, we still cannot do with less people in the factory, because all the checking, all everything are done in the lab or in our factory. But one thing is, I see this pandemic is bringing us a threat and also opportunity. In the personal hygiene product, we see that it's a good opportunity. People are spending more on this hygiene product for daily life, and give room for demand for this tissue product to grow. We develop a special tissue that is with antibacterial chemical to fill the demand of people will use more of this product in their daily life. But the threat we see is more on the lower buying power of the of the people. Because of this pandemic crisis, few months, a lot of business are closing down, hotels, airlines, a lot of we see the frequency are with more longer time of this pandemic. The frequency you will hurt a lot of business are in a bad situation. And
thank you, Danny. Oh, okay. Yeah. So also to future-proof against such unforeseen event circumstances, what are the various stakes? I mean, from Ronaldo, what do you think the industry should be doing to prevent such unforeseen downtime during such a kind of pandemic period?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as a tendency, and this will happen and have to happen. So we have to enter and move really forward into the digital world. Yeah. So digital products have to become more inside of our operations to bring the benefits, or the benefits are efficiency, or bring the benefits of availability of products, availability of production, and also don't create less dependency of the labor force, less dependency of the skilled operation, less dependency that very well, and everybody knows our industry is not that attractive anymore. The young guys are not saying, I ask my kids, do you want to go to work in the paper machine? Never, yeah, never. And we see this all the time. So that means we have to create a ways that we create, we reduce the dependence of that. And Food Paper is creating products really to push in that direction. So we call it Paper Making 4.0 products. That is our trademark. And we have a different lines. One is really to increase efficiency of the machines with products that can bring very good, interesting positions to reduce the dependence and increase the efficiency. And in the other hand, we have the own care products that really manage the existing assets to bring higher availability of the meals and bring the profitability in the end. So the target is reduce the dependence, create easier operation, and also bring higher efficiency and higher availability, of course, in bringing competitiveness and profitability to the customers. Okay.
Thank you, Ronaldo. So let me drop a question to Tim right now. Hi, Tim. So how do you think the domestic and away from home tissue market in Southeast Asia will be affected in the short and medium term? Do you see raw material supply demand evolving in the same time frame?
Yeah, so I think I take the point about the away from home market having been diminished for a period of time, but we've seen at a segment level away from home consumption of some products, like, for example, hand towel and other sanitary products, beginning to grow again and growing back at a really fast rate. And that could well be permanent, or at least might last, a half a generation, because we are all impacted by this thing in a very dramatic way. And so washing our hands and etc. could be quite substantial. And we have seen some supply shortages and outages in hand towel where businesses had not shifted their production, not just in Australia, but in parts of Southeast Asia. Some of our data shows that. So I think the same could apply at a household level, but we know that those ridiculous situations of people fighting one another over the last roll of toilet paper, that those things are deeply ingrained behaviours in the midst of crises. And we've seen ripples of that all around the world, in some places more egregious than others. But we've seen ripples of that. So I think we're going to see pretty patchy consumption patterns. But overall, let's take the tissue products as a macro. We're going to see tissue consumption rise at a faster rate than it has risen over the last decade. and in particular on a per capita basis. So I'm pretty sure that the human behaviour is already showing that individuals are using more tissue products, wherever they're using them. They're using more tissue products, or more are being used for them. That will continue on. And it will continue on, I think, for a considerable period of time. We might see those spikes that we saw before flatten out a little bit, but I think they're going to be pretty, they're going to be pretty consistently up. Certainly that's what all the per capita data is showing. What that's going to mean for resources is they're going to be under pressure, especially wood and fibre resources. We don't think about it much in tissue, but the Chinese recovered paper import ban that starts on just 45, 50 days away is already having an impact on unbleached craft supplies. And we've seen already in Australasia, in Australia and New Zealand, 2 mills switch off parts of their bleaching capacity to supply unbleached craft into the packaging industry. At some point, that will have an impact on tissue and printing and writing papers. And if anything has saved the tissue sector from being short on fibre supplies in recent times, it's probably been that its rise has come as the decline in printing and writing papers has been recorded. So I see the challenge being in fibre supply and also in making sure that your supply chain is lined up to deliver to you on a consistent basis when behaviour of consumers and retailers at the other end is inconsistent and very patchy for the next little while.
Thank you, Tim. So the final question from me today will be, what would be the main message, for our audience today to take back in terms of life after COVID-19?
Perhaps if I jump in and finish off, Andy. We've seen some very big businesses realise that the weakest point in their system has been the small and medium enterprises around them. And there's been quite a lot of effort put into ensuring that there's supply chain integrity. So maybe we've all learned personally how to be a little bit more kind and a little bit more patient and friendly with one another because things are difficult. We observed that with some very large manufacturers, recognising that they have to be kind, patient and supportive of those who are supporting their businesses because the fractures in the supply chain are so damaging to everybody. So I think we're likely to see more supply chain integrity activity and probably a little more attention from large businesses on the quality of their relationships rather than the value of the transaction on a day-to-day basis. I think that's, and I hope that's a big takeout from here.
Thank you, Tim. Somesh, do you have anything to contribute, to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it rings a bell, what we discussed earlier as well, that the key things I think to take out from here is that to look into the whole supply chain, as Tim mentioned, and how resilient it is, how well integrated it is from, let's say, the raw material till it goes to the end consumer. And also to look into some of the innovative product ranges that some of these players are already looking into, because that would be a way of kind of optimizing your portfolio from producer angle, so that they make the most of the raw materials and provide kind of products all the time, which kind of helps the consumer to deal with whatever situation they are. So it's a bit of a adaptability and resilience of the whole supply chain. I think it's important.
Thank you, Somesh. So Danny, do you have anything to actually share with the audience as well?
Yeah, what I can say now is this COVID-19 pandemic is made a big change in our daily life. Some practices will back, some practices won't be back forever. But I see we have to do effectively this time, keep innovate on the products that we make to put into the market, do more automation in the factory, less people in the production line, and control the quality more, and see what we can provide more to the market in the after the COVID is done. I think that's all for me.
Thank you, Danny. So, Ronaldo?
I would add, and only a remind, so technology is there, technology is available, yeah? People are getting connected. So in the industrial environment, so as soon as you implement more, let's say, automation or digital products, you really have to push to the people to use it. You have to change mindset. You have to really train these people to get use about these new tools. If they don't believe, they will not use, then it's a waste of time and money. Yeah, this digital transformation is coming, even that we don't see a lot of investments, is coming. So start. I really recommend start, understand where you are, understand the assets, how you can really create a roadmap to reach your digital targets. Yeah, really start in this new journey. It's very, very important. So as Ray said, so the market is growing. So we have new projects in the pipelines. New machines are expected to come, and are expected to come with these new digital tools or even digital readiness for the market. So if you don't start entering these worlds, you will become obsolete, and your cost of productions or your productions will be not effective anymore. So entering this world, entering this digital world, that will be part of your protection for the future as well. Okay.
Thank you, Ronaldo. So, so right now we will go on to the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your questions into the text box located to the right of the presentation window, or click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If we are not able to answer all submitted questions during today's webinar, we'll be sure to share them with our speakers who will reply to you offline.
Andy, hello. While people are thinking about adding in a question, maybe I could just throw one in there for our panelists as well. I've sat and listened in the last hour to people sounding tremendously upbeat, and that's an incredible thing for us in the midst of, you know, what's been an absolutely horrendous year with the pandemic. Maybe each of the panelists could just give us their comments on how upbeat they really feel for 2021 and beyond. I'd love to hear that, if I may. Thank you.
So maybe we can start with Somesh.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's a very interesting question, and of course, it's very promising, definitely. It's growing, as we mentioned earlier, 5.2% per annum, 2025. When we recover from, let's say, the immediate impact of COVID-19, then again, the economic growth and the population growth will take precedence, and it will kind of pull forward. Some of these consumer habits that we have noticed that has changed or has been accelerated, particularly change in the, let's say, consumption patterns to some other segments or e-commerce adaptation. I think that will continue and will shape how this industry actually interact with the consumers. So I think these are the two things going forward: good growth, and how this growth happens. I think how it interacts with the producer would be an interesting topic.
Thank you so much, Ronaldo.
I fully agree with Ray. Yeah, so the market is growing. Tissue is a first, let's say, is detected as a first necessity product, so people need to have it. So in the paper industry, also more board, more carton, more packaging grades also will be produced, because you have to transport these products, and more the usage of this technology will come. So I'm pretty sure next year we will continue. We will not be the same. And I like very much your presentation, Ray, when you say the new normality. Yeah. And I think this is, we have to adapt ourselves. We have to understand that we have to use and we have to act a new normal situation. Okay.
Thank you, Ronaldo. Who would like to go first, Danny or Tim? Tim.
Sure. So optimism is a basic human trait, and we shouldn't deny our ability to sugarcoat sometimes even bitter pills, of course. But some of my optimism about whether it's consumption or other matters really comes really from trends. And it comes from inexorable trends, like mega trends like population growth, per capita consumption growth of certain products as living, like tissue, as living standards increase. And I think those things provide optimism. If optimism is the right word, they provide some optimism. They provide a level of, for me at least, some certainty. One of the things that makes me most optimistic is, however, the extent to which being at home and local much more has caused people, and including businesses, to think about the local elements, not merely to look internationally, but also to look back locally. But while the grass might always be greener on the other side of the fence, the grass is always closer at home. And I don't think in our global digital connections that we need always to go so far afield to find solutions, some of the solutions that we need, particularly around suppliers and etc. So I have some optimism about industrial ecosystems that are being rebuilt that had perhaps fractured over the last few years. I think that's a positive thing. Hopefully something that continues.
Thank you, Tim. So lastly, Danny, so do you mind sharing with us on your optimistic ideas moving forward? Danny, you're on mute. Yes.
Yeah, I still optimistic that next year after this COVID-19 vaccine is released in the market, that the market will be booming again for tissue. I think it will go to a big increase on the demand, especially in Indonesia, what we have right now. But the one thing that we should be also aware that the supply of supply of this tissue in the market will still continue to have a challenge in terms of the logistic things, like this last few months, the imbalances of the in and out of the containers have many disruption in the market. I think this impact will go to 1-2 months after today, but after that we see a bright future for this demand and supply chain will effect in 2021.
Okay, Thank you everyone for the unselfish sharing of such great insights into the industry. So that's all we have today for questions and answer and also for our panel discussion. Thank you again. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and expertise on today's topic. So I'll pass the mic over to Michael Jackson now.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. And that then really sums up nicely on time. If I look at my watch, ladies and gentlemen, our session on Asia in the spotlight for you. And as Andy said, I'm sure you enjoyed the very considered and honest content provided so well by all of our presenters. And I'd also like to add my thanks as well on behalf of all at Tissue World to our platinum sponsor, Solar Turbines. They helped us bring this webinar to you. And of course, a special thanks there to Emilio Rigamonte from Solar, who talked us through the new technologies and their application, not only across the world, but specifically on Asia as well. Somnath Ray from AFRI, wonderful, taking us through our introductory keynote. I want to call him out for being the first person I've come across this year who's talked of positive numbers. Wow. And they didn't relate to COVID, by the way, which is a great thing. He predicted a health tissue market with, what was it, some 5.2% growth across Asia by 2025. And in these times, those are spectacular numbers. Thank you very much for that. And also to our gold sponsor of the panel discussion, Waco, who since 1953 have been developing and producing non-contact application systems for product optimization and surface finishing with all kinds of fluids and powdery substances. You know, Waco's focus, like us, on the lowest possible, exact and best use of respective resources, and particularly environmentally friendly industrial production, which is a perfect way of me really rounding out to thank not only our panelists, as well as those who introduced us to papermaking 4.0. I actually loved that phrase. All of whom, as our panelists, as Andy said, contributed so well to our session. So I can't believe that time has flown by so quickly, ladies and gentlemen. That's what happens, though, when you get the quality of presentation and the kind of discussion around industry topics that engages you in this particular style. The networking on the platform continues, of course, for you. And that's really one of the most significant reasons that Tissue World went digital for you in these difficult times. So please make sure you take full advantage of the opportunity to meet, to network, to engage with all of your industry colleagues from around the world. And my goodness, most of them are here for you right now today. For the webinar, for the morning hour session in European time, we're going to call it quits for now, but we're coming back to you later today with our Yankee workshop special. That's going to be broadcast promptly from 5 p.m. Central European time, 4 p.m. in the UK. And for our colleagues who are now busy waking up in the USA, it'll be 10 a.m. USA Central time. So we so look forward to seeing you there. Please come back and join us, but don't forget to go and network with all of the industry right now. From me, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever in the world you're watching. We'll be back with you later today. Thank you.